How you doing, Romanian enthusiasts? Welcome to another episode of Season 6. Today we talk about prepositions in accusative. If that A word sounds a bit strange, then skip to the briefing before you stop watching. That's where I will assure you, well, if this wasn't enough, that there's nothing to be afraid of. We will cover the different types of prepositions in accusative, like simple and compound. We will compare them to their English counterparts or their equivalent thereof. Then we will talk about the special case when you don't use the definite article after an accusative preposition. And we end up with some prepositions with hyphens that you should add to your vocabulary no matter what. But before that, have you heard about our live streams and calls? In April we'll run 4 of them, one each Wednesday. First one is free and it's here on YouTube, and we will talk about random things happening now in Romania. Watch out, that won't be about language, but it will be about everything else. Then from the second week of April we'll get into monthly Q&A sessions, where I answer Romanian questions from you and the internet. That is available under the Boss tier membership on Patreon. So, for the price of only 2 fresh pints a month, you don't only get a chance to support me, get access to 4 learning materials a month, get your name in the video, and get to vote for topics that will be covered in the next videos and streams, but you also get any language question answered every month. The third week of April will see us chat, talk, or try to talk in Romanian in the speaking class, available for anyone with a minimum foundation of A1. You'll see in the upcoming days a teaser of how it's been in yesterday's speaking class. And you can get access to that and the Q&A sesh for the price of seeing me tipsy under the Învățăcel tier. Then, in the 4th week of April, we'll host another group class, basically a crash course on any topic we decide on. And if you don't know what that looks like, I will share a teaser video on that class too. So you can see how much fun we had last time. This is available under the Philanthrop tier, where you get access to the previously mentioned Q&A live stream and speaking class as well. And that would be for the price of basically getting me drunk. Okay, enough of this. Head over Patreon after watching this. And make sure you check the exercises for this specific lesson down in the description and the comment section. And now, let's go to the prepositions. Alright guys, so we're here with one of my favorite topics. Because as many people are scared about this, in my opinion, it's actually really easy. There are very clear rules, and there's a whole bunch of prepositions that you can learn very easily. And I am gonna give you lists, and I'm gonna give you examples, and I'm gonna give you the very clear rules. So happy days, we're here for a treat. You are here for a treat, because I probably have done this lesson countless times, and well, my pleasure to do it here on YouTube too. Prepositions in accusative. Now, as I said, we'll start with briefing. And briefing, really what it is just a way to make you understand a couple of very basic principles. There are only 2 points that I want to make in this briefing part. And the first one is this. The first one is up here. So let's focus just on that one, and then we'll focus on the second one. So, accusative is not really that scary. When you hear accusative, it's basically just basic context. What that means is asking yourself questions like how, and answering, I don't know, how you do an action, like if you do it fast or if you do it slow, if you do it with difficulty or if you do it with pleasure. If you go to a place, then you're asking where. So asking a question like where, how, when, and answering it. And usually when you answer those questions, like what, how, when, where, you might, in 90% of the situations, probably less, but I'm just saying it for the sake of it, you will get most of the times a preposition. Yeah, where are you going? To this. How are you going? By train. What do you like, or how do you like eating? With the spoon. Yeah. And that's accusative. It's basic context. It's questions, basic questions like what, how, where, when, and so on. Careful, there are not things like. Probably it's easier to remember what's not in accusative to, have it a bit easier. What's not, like what questions are not under accusative in Romanian, because most of them are under accusative, are whose, which probably, or I don't know, maybe it's in genitive, to whom, which is dative, and things like who. Those three will never be in accusative. Things like cine, al, a, ai, ale cui, which is whose, and cui, which is whom. I'm not going to get into the details of it. All you have to know is that those three are not in accusative. I'm going to make it very clear from the beginning. This is not accusative. Everything else is. With who, by what, from where, blah, 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 blah. Accusative. So, how do we put that into practice? I have this very basic sentence here, Andrei merge. When you hear Andrei merge, you might think of, wow, I get so much information out of it. And I know, I'm sarcastic. Because you don't, right? Like, you don't really understand much from the context. You have no idea of where he goes, what he does, what's the purpose, at what time he has to go there, and so on. If we take questions that are not here on the left, things like maybe when, we ask, when does Andrei go? We're asking with the verb. When does Andrei go? So let's say, merge la ora 10. Okay? Where does Andrei go? Merge la aeroport la ora 10. How does Andrei go to the airport at 10 o'clock? I don't know, by bus, cu autobuzul, and so on.
Stefan from the future here. I need to make a specification because the question in Romanian is actually cu ce merge, with what he is going, instead of how, like in English. So bear that in mind as another difference between the questions and how we think differently in English and Romanian.
Basically, that's it. That's accusative 101. And the second point here that I wanted to make is to remember this second, this idea of questions. So for each preposition, there is a question. That's quite underrated how important that is. And to be fully honest with you, with accusative, it doesn't matter so much, but with other cases, it does. So for those three here, remembering that for every single preposition there is a question. When you will encounter genitive, dative, or nominative, this is cine is nominative, which is the easiest, but anyways, you will know that, okay, that question cannot be under those cases. It's just in accusative. And that's how you get validation, basically. We're looking for validation when we're looking for cases, because I know it's quite a heavy topic. So that's point number 2. For each preposition, there is a question. What does that mean in practice? For la, Andrei merge la aeroport. Let's say we stop here. Unde merge Andrei? So you ask the verb, always ask the verb. Unde merge Andrei la aeroport? That's where you start. After you start with verb, you'll see, if you're a bit more advanced, you can ask some other words in the sentence as well. And then the second la. Când merge la aeroport? La ora 10. Cum merge la aeroport? Cu autobuzul. Yeah? So this, if you learn it at this point, it will help you loads in the future when things get really messy. If you remember that for each preposition there is a question. I would say this is for more advanced people, but if you remember a bit of it, if you're aware of it right now, that would be ideal. Point number 2, types of prepositions. This is, I think, quite a straightforward topic. There are simple, there are compound, and from. I'm going to get to from in a second. So this is a list of simple prepositions in Romanian. You'll see that here I should add by, because we have here I should add by because we have seen it a second ago. Cu autobuzul. Now we can just have a look at them and see something very interesting. Most of them have one translation, like pe, like near, under, without, after, so on. But some of them don't. They have two different translations. That one, this one, this one. Oh my god, look at that. That's the worst, right? So what's important to remember here? I'm not going to go through all of them because this is a list, it's vocabulary. You can use flashcards and many other really useful tools like spaced learning and all those 21st century shenanigans and learn them. But what you should really remember from this is that in Romanian we think in a different way. Once again, this is a thing that I say and I said throughout the classes and the lessons here on YouTube, on the live streams and so on, over and over again. In Romanian we think differently than in English. Some prepositions will have a different meaning in Romanian than in English. So for example, my favorite example that we'll talk about it in a second is buy, right? We saw a second ago, you go buy bus in English, buy, but in Romanian you go with the bus. So things like this, yeah, it's changing the way we see it. You know, some people just say, okay, it is a different word. That's fine, I'll remember it like that. That's good if you're a beginner. But the moment you get more advanced, it's important to see as well how that influences your thinking. Because if you say, I go by bus in English, for example, that means that the bus is, I don't know, the way I perceive it, is it's helping me. It drives me there. In Romanian, when you say merg cu autobuzul, in Romanian you say that both the bus and me are going in the same direction, right? So it's a bit different, the way we think. And that in grammar, in vocabulary, in speaking, on the long run, it will really help. Okay, enough of that. Let's go to the second one, compound prepositions, which are even cooler, I think. They are not much different than in English. It's the same principle. You put two prepositions together and you get a compound one, right? Pe la, it's around the time. This is about time, by the way. De pe, from, de lângă, from near, from around. De la, again, from a place. We'll talk about this in a second. De după, from after, până la, and so on. Printre, among. So this one is prin plus între. Yeah, in case it's not very obvious. So through, between, something like that. I don't know. Anyways, you don't have to remember exactly what each of them stand for separately. You have to just know the way how to use them together. And what's quite interesting, I think, compared to English, is that if you imagine an example from English, like, are you from? In Romanian you say, de unde ești? Oh god. Yeah. So you will have them together here, whilst in English they are separate. And maybe who are you going with? This is a bit different, right? It's not just prepositions, it's also putting those question words together with prepositions. But I think it's quite important to mention here, cu cine mergi. Again, in Romanian, it's in the same place. In English, you kind of split them around the verb. Again, not very, very crucial here because they are not really compound prepositions, but it is kind of a compound principle when you think about this preposition plus question word, things like what, where, and so on. So that's it. Not much to say here in compound. And then we go to this very clear topic for a Romanian and very misunderstood for a foreigner. From, we have de, we have de la, we have din, and we have de pe. Probably there are more, but I'm just going to stick to those first. So de is usually used with a noun or an adverb with the sense of from. So plec de acasă. So I'm going away, like I'm leaving from home. This is kind of the way you use it in Romanian. Plec de acasă, and then that's an adverb, and yeah, acasă is an adverb. And then noun, for example, fug de câine. I'm running away from the dog because it's gonna bite my ass. De la, that's with the sense of from a place. Yeah? So vin de la, I don't know, bibliotecă, de la muncă, and so on. Those things are places. Din, here it's de and in, de and în, sorry. So from inside. Yeah. So those two, careful here, those two can be used in the same place, basically, in the same sentence, but they will mean different things. So if I say, instead of vin de la bibliotecă, vin din bibliotecă, or, well, let's not use muncă because that's a bit weird. But if I say vin din bibliotecă, that means I was inside the building. I was inside the library. So another connection made to the context. Yeah, accusative is context. When you say vin de la, that means the place was there and I'm coming from there, nothing more interesting than that. And then if I say I come from inside the library, that means it's important. I don't know how it's important, but for some reason, for that conversation, maybe it's important. Maybe you seen something like a poster or an advert or some creepy guy. I don't know, whatever it is, but it's important for the context. Again, so that's this, and then depe. That doesn't have, like, this depe doesn't really have many uses. For example, from on something. So things like de pe masă is maybe the most clear, the most straightforward, the most cliche one, but things like also alergat până aici de pe munte. So I ran all the way to here from the mountain. So de pe is commonly used from the mountain as well, from the table, from the rooftop, from anything that can be on something. Cool. So that's basically the idea around simple, compound, and from. Careful with this from. Practice this as much as you can. Find as many resources to check for more vocabulary words. I'm thinking of doing a little cheat sheet on Patreon with words that can be used with de, la, din, and de pe. So check Patreon on Saturdays, and if you're not a member yet, please join. Anybody from at least tier 2 prietenoși can have access to learning materials, which I post every Saturday. If you've got all the way here without liking the video or subscribing to the channel, well, all I can say is you could be slightly more grateful. So make sure you do that before we go back to the video.
Right now, we can move to Romanian versus English. Pam pam pam. The big battle. So one thing that's very important is this is something, by the way, this topic is something quite huge, and I think this is not really the point of this video. I just want you to be aware of how de is used and when, for example, it's part of a prepositional construction. Maybe it's also part of a supine construction. If you don't know what it is, then I would be happy in your position because supine is a mess. Maybe it's part of a phrase. So also, not only that, so not only the way it's used, but also the meaning can be very, very weird. De can mean of, de can mean from, then de can mean by, de can sometimes be used as genitive if you're lazy, de can be the scope of something, but again, here is a bit different. So this on the left, this is like how it's used, and on the right, it's the meaning. This is basically sentence, and this is word. Yeah. So de in the sentence, so like the higher scope, the higher context, and de as a word and its meaning. I'm not gonna get into this right now. It's more of a exclamation mark warning sign, because de is or can be quite a confusing word in Romanian, and I want you to try to spot exactly how it would be translated into English whenever you see a de. Then we have this by, which I have said earlier that this describes perfectly the way you think differently from English to Romanian. And yeah, so by can be de, for example, prezentarea a fost făcută de Mihai. Yeah, Mihai, the presentation was made by Mihai. Or de către. Yeah, here you have this optional. Către. Because it's a passive voice. And you kind of have both options here. Then you have cu, which we have seen already when you use it for a means of transport. Vin cu avionul. Yeah, I come by plane. Or if you sit on something, it will be pe. So merg pe bicicletă. Another very interesting use is this one, because there are other ones, but I'm not going to get into this here. Those are probably the most important ones. So de in the passive construction, passive voice, and cu or pe is in the transport. When you sit on something, you that's like when you sit on something for like on a means of transport, like bike, motorbike, horse, you use pe. Then to as a preposition versus to as a verb. Boom. To as a preposition is la, and to as a verb is să. This is something that if you've never learned a different language, or maybe, I don't know, you haven't learned subjunctive, can come really tricky, and you might need quite a lot of time to understand this difference, because this is to as a preposition versus to as a verb. It's basically the difference between la and să. When you have verb 1
plus verb to, that's when you have se. When you have after the to a noun, noun, or an adverb, it will pretty much all the time be a la. So that's something you should take into consideration. I'm gonna do this just, if you're a complete beginner, I want to go to the sea. Jesus. So I want to go to the sea. You don't say vreau la merge. Yeah. You don't say vreau la merge. I've heard this before. I know it might sound ridiculous, but it's right? Because want is a verb 1, and to go is verb 2. So that's when you use it with se, and it's vreau să merg. Just so nobody gets any confusion out of this. And then here, if I say in Romanian stuff like yes, la plimbare, or alergare, for that instance, it can be either of them. So here, plimbare is not a verb, guys. It's not a verb. It's a noun. So I'm going out for a walk or for a run. Very important. Because many people translate it from English straight on, and they say, I go running, I go out, I go walking. So you don't have two verbs in Romanian. You can use it. Merg să alerg. You can use it like that. But if you use la, if you prefer to use la, put it with this, with the noun. So don't say yes la plimb, for example. Cool. I think that's it. And finally, the last point here, Romanian versus English. When you have of and to, so de and la, yeah. If you have a the after it, I would say not 100%, but maybe 80% of the times, this one will be genitive and this one will be dative. So you will not get de, and you will not get to translate. You don't get to translate it with de, and you don't get to translate it with la. But instead, you'll use the genitive dative article. So big caution with that. Yeah. I think I said this in a previous video as well. So of the is not really what a native English speaker would use. Probably apostrophe s is more common, but a foreigner might use this of, like instead of saying my friend's place, some other non-native English speakers might say the place of the friend. And here with to the, this is probably more common to be confused. This will be covered properly when we talk about dative, but it's just, this is again just a like raising a flag, be aware of this. And that's that with Romanian versus English. We can move here for probably the most interesting topic so far, which is one that I see the most confusion with: preposition versus noun versus preposition plus noun versus preposition plus noun plus describing word. So let's take those examples here. We have, I want to go to the cinema, she is close to the building, the kids left the school. If you have a minute to spare, I would like you to try to translate those. Pause the video and I'll see you after you're done. If you're done, I will translate those for you. So vreau să merg la cinema. Ea este aproape de clădire. Copiii au plecat de la școală. Yeah, because in Romanian that's how you say it. You say it from the school. So maybe you learned something new today. This is preposition plus noun. Cinema, clădire, școală. If you got that wrong, well, it's because you translated it with the, which is not this. Is not dative. You're not directing an action to anything. Just saying things about the context where you went, where the building, where she is close to, and well, this one doesn't have a to there, so it's fine. But the problem arises when some people say cinemaul. Vreau să merg la cinemaul. Ea este aproape de clădirea. Copiii au plecat de la școală. That's wrong. If you have nothing that describes the cinema, the building or the school, describing word, yeah? Describing word. Things like adjectives, numbers. What else? Other nouns. Maybe even some genitive dative articles. Those can be describing words. So if instead of I want to go to the cinema, you say, I want to go to the fancy cinema. Vreau să merg la... Oh, I made a mess. Vreau să merg la cinemaul fițos. And because you add that fancy, which is a describing word, this will get the article, the definite article. Then, ea este aproape de clădire. Oh my god. If you're watching this, I will change to the escalidro very, very soon. I checked it out, it's quite good. She is close to the building. Let's say instead of just the building, she's close to the friends building. So we use a noun this time. Clădirea prietenului ei. Well, we don't need that ei. Prietenului or prietenei, doesn't matter. But regardless, we've seen this a happening there. And let's see here, left school number 2. Yeah, let's say we are in a town and there are many schools and one of them is called school number 2. So when you have stuff like that, you see that in English here you don't even have an article, a definite article, but here it would be de la școala 2 or școala numărul 2. That really is optional. So you get școala. Boom. So that's what you need in order to get that, a describing word. Finally, we move on to prepositions plus the indefinite article. Some really strange things with hyphen. This is when you have to think of prepositions like din and prin and indefinite articles. Yeah, so stuff like un, o. Sometimes you'll get uni and unele because they are in this category as well. And how could I forget also un? Din, prin, un. Those are the prepositions that get hyphened when you add an indefinite article after it. So in practice, how this looks like, I found the key in a box. Try it, pause the video, and I'll see you in a second maybe. If not, am găsit cheia cutie, într-o cutie. There you go. I found the key in a box. stuff like that, yeah? So in a, în o, într-o. They will have an T and R, all of them. So the options are, for example, let's take one of them. They will be very similar, yeah? So din, trun, dintr-o, dintruni, dintrunele. You'll not see the second ones very often, but they exist. Întrunele, printrunele, printro, printrun. So it's exactly the same. Where you see this N here, I'm not going to go through all of them. Where you see this N here, this applies the same. You add an TR, a dash, or a hyphen, or a line, or a cratimă in Romanian, and then un, o, uni, unele. That's how you do prepositions plus indefinite article. It's very easy, and those are the main ones among those indefinite articles. Whoa, okay, so let's do a little recap. We talked about a lot of things today. I told you that accusative is context, and for each preposition you need to think, at least try to remember there is a question there. Then we saw which possible types and prepositions there are. The weird mess that happens here with from, that you have 4 different options for from in Romanian. Romanian versus English, different warnings, let's say, for you to be aware of. Mainly the difference in thinking that you have between Romanian and English. Then we moved to this scary topic that's really not scary as long as you're aware that there is a describing word. So maybe learn adjectives, numbers, nouns, like what they are as part of a sentence, yeah. And then finally we talked about prepositions plus indefinite articles, which are really cool. They sound cool, and I recommend you to learn them because they can come in handy, and it makes you sound a bit less weird when you say din un or prin un or în o. Romanians don't do that. We like to shorten our way through things. If you know Romanians very well, you know what I mean. And also with phonetics here, like we try to find many phonetic rules to shorten the words and make less sounds when you speak. All right. Thank you all for joining me in this prepositions class. I know there are many other intriguing things about prepositions, and thank God we have season 6 to cover that. Don't forget to check Patreon for all the live streams and class goodies, and until the next one, la revedere!